When you ask people what edge compute is, you get a range of answers. Cloud compute and DevOps with devices and sensors, with semiconductors outside the data center, including connectivity, AI, and a security strategy. It's a stew of technologies that's powering our vehicles, our buildings, our factories, and more. It's also filled with fascinating people that are passionate about their tech, their story, and their world. I'm your host, Pete Bernard, and the Excelsior Show makes sense of what edge compute is, who's doing it, and how it can transform your business and you. So let's get started. Great. So why don't we get started, Jasbir? Thanks for joining us here on the Excelsior Show. I'll let you introduce yourself and give your origin story here in a second, but I'll just give the listeners a little background. I think you reached out to me, I don't know, it was like 6 months ago or so, and you had written a really interesting book about IoT, and I think that started our conversation. There's the whole topic of kind of learning and kind of keeping educated on all the latest things happening in IoT and edge computing is just a fascinating topic. So it's great to have you here on the show. Why don't you give yourself an introduction and let everyone know who you're at?
Sure. Thanks, Pete. Thanks for having me here. You're right. So we had that conversation 6 months back, and good that we have kept in touch and we have a regular communication. But it's the only thing that now after 6 months we are having this podcast. But as they say, better late than never. So
Right.
It's my privilege and honor to be here. Thanks for having me here.
And where are you dialing in from today? Where are you?
I'm dialing from India, New Delhi.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So it's almost night, 9 o'clock here, the night,
right.
And the summer has just started.
Getting a little warm, not too warm yet.
It's too warm in the afternoon. Mornings and evenings are pleasant, still pleasant. Yeah.
Good. So give us a little more. Yeah. How did you get to writing this book and kind of I know you're at IBM right now, and give us a little kind of the origin story here.
Yeah. So I'm working into this IoT domain for almost 9 years now. So in fact, I started this journey with IoT when it was not even called IoT. They used to call it M2M, if you remember, right?
Right. Machine to machine.
Machine to machine, yeah. So I remember the days, right, when kind of, our marketing team came and said that, no, now we need to talk IoT, not M2M, because that's what is selling in the market.
Sure.
And I remember, right, taking those presentations, PPTs, and doing search and replace, M2M to IoT. Those were the days, right? So I started with a home automation project, okay, way back in 2000, and say it was 13 roughly, or 14, on 13-14 time frame. So we developed one product called Home Automation Gateway, okay. Only thing is it was too ahead of its time. Okay, market was probably not ready for that. Okay, it didn't do well commercially, but it gave us a lot of learning about what is this space, right? What it entails. Okay, what type of different communication technologies are there? Bluetooth, Wi-Fi. Okay, and kind of a basic stuff or fundamental stuff. How this IoT thing works, M2M thing works, right? What can be the challenges there? And since it was kind of a embedded device, right? So we had to kind of develop everything on a small footprint on embedded device. At that point of time, it was not connected to cloud. Okay, so we had to do all the analytics, right? All the user interface, everything on that platform itself. So that was my kind of a starting point in M2M/IoT. And that got me really hooked. I said, this is something which needs to be explored. And the reason I got interested here because I had that initial background in embedded domain. Okay, when I started my career almost 22 or 23 years back, I used to write firmwares for embedded devices, care of system, car navigation systems, Okay, all those embedded devices, right? Printers. So I had that, good understanding of how this embedded um, side works, what are the constraints, and what type of challenges we typically face in this domain, which you would appreciate is quite different from the normal programming, right? The desktop programming, for example. So I had that background, and when I did this home automation project, I thought this is a kind of a good platform for me because I can leverage that initial learning of from embedded domain here.
Right, right.
And also, fortunately, what happened that almost during that time frame, I was also introduced into this cloud world. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so this IoT and cloud journey almost happened at the same time. Then I realized this is the right place for me to be in because I have good understanding of this device side, embedded field, and also I can add to it the cloud knowledge. Okay, and I can be kind of very good probably contributor into this domain.
Yeah.
And fortunately for me, my prior organization supported me. It's HCL Technologies, where I spent a lot of my
HCL,
career.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a big company in India and also in US also.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And company supported me, and a lot of projects which came my way were IoT only. For example, after this home automation project, we did one project in smart agriculture space. Okay,
Interesting.
for one of our Canadian customers. Okay,
Right.
so they wanted to kind of move their on-prem solution to cloud. So that was their requirement,
They call
and
that a
then
lift and shift. That's what they call that. Lift and shift. You move your on-prem to the cloud.
correct, yeah. So we had given them both the options. Lift and shift was one of the options, and another was the complete re-architecture on the cloud.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So they preferred the later option because of
Mm-hmm.
more benefits there. Also took more time, but they were okay with it.
Yeah.
So that was the second project in IoT space. Then we also did some conditional monitoring projects in IoT. Okay, specifically in pharmaceutical space, where
Wow.
the requirement was that we were supposed to kind of monitor temperature and pressure of environmental chambers. Okay, where the vaccines and medicines were kind of kept. So that was third project, and fourth
Wow.
project was asset tracking project. Okay,
Mm.
where we used RFID tags to track assets. Assets can
Mm-hmm.
be any type of assets. It can be, for example, IT assets, laptop, desktops. Okay, and any for example, in one of so we kind of developed this platform for asset tracking, and
Mm-hmm.
we kind of customize it for multiple customers. Okay, so for example,
Right.
one customer and one use case which we handle using this platform was for a MRO customer, right? The organization which typically repairs the airplanes. So for that, and they asked for that they wanted to track their tools which they use for repair using our solution.
Mm.
So that was also quite a successful collaboration, and they were
So
quite
you
happy.
had, yeah,
Yeah,
so you had a number of these, and we'll talk about them kind of canonical use cases, I guess. Going back, by the way, embedded. Yeah, so we used to call it embedded way back. So I was an engineer at Phoenix Technologies, so for BIOS, and that was some of the stuff you had talked about, a firmware engineering, right? And then we evolved the terminology to M2M, and then to IoT, and now kind of edge computing. But
yeah,
at the end of the day, it's things talking to other things and talking to the cloud. But it
correct.
sounds like you've encountered, and this is kind of where maybe I'd like to understand sort of where your efforts came from around the book, but it's around these canonical use cases that I think a lot of us in the IoT space see over and over again, right? Asset tracking,
Yeah,
smart agriculture, healthcare. There's these sort of patterns, that you see over and over again that customers want to use to solve business problems, right? So that's kind of what you've been sort of, that's what you've been sort of
correct.
focusing on.
That's correct. That's correct. And as
Hmm.
you rightly pointed out, since I worked in multiple domains and use cases, so a thought came to my mind that, since I'm kind of fortunate enough to work across multiple domains and use cases, I was able to find a lot of commonalities between those solutions.
Mm.
Okay, so that was the trigger point why I thought that I should write a book on architectural patterns, because I saw that although on the face of it they appear very different use cases
Hmm.
catering to different domains, but under the hood, a lot of things were common. Okay,
Yeah.
so that was the trigger point for writing this book, Architectural
Mm.
Patterns for Developing IoT Solutions. That was one big motivation. Another
Hmm.
thing was that when I searched in the market that if something similar is available,
Mm.
it was not there. Okay,
Right. Right.
yeah, so either kind of books were going too deep into the technologies, okay,
Mm.
kind of very very specific technologies, which made it very difficult for slightly semi-technical, non-technical people to understand. They were not able to
Mm.
understand because they were too much technical.
Right.
Uh, Another aspect I realized that the technologies, right, they keep on changing. Okay, so there is no point in kind of talking too much about technology because anyway it's going to
Right.
change. Why not to talk about the fundamental principles and techniques, right, which are not going to
Hmm.
change with time. Okay, so that and again I kind of did a search, I did a googling, and I searched on Amazon also if something of that nature is available or not. Okay, then I realized even that is not available. So that kind of triggered me that no, now is the right time. I think I have an
Yeah.
idea, and then not many people are thinking on those lines. So it's the right time to jump on and start writing the book.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think
that,
the idea of going, kind of abstracting it a little bit to patterns, and because I think a lot of business, there is an education gap here. Like when I've met with, leadership from Fortune 500 companies, they don't have the knowledge and education. They get sold a lot of stuff. They get told a lot of stuff by sales teams, but they don't really understand like all the possible patterns and things. And they can, once you explain the patterns, then they can sort of map it to their own business, which they know better than anyone else. So I think it's interesting that you took that approach to say, let's just take a look at the abstract patterns and architectures. And then as people read the book, whether they're super technical or not as technical, they can sort of think about how does this apply to me or my business? Right. And that's sort of the fundamental thing. If you start with, I have these problems in my business that I need to solve, how can this technology help me, and look at it from a more pattern perspective, I think that is a good fundamental grounding than just sort of buying some tech and trying some stuff out. Right.
that's correct. That's correct. So the idea, as you have rightly pointed out, the idea is that in case you have some idea and you want to implement it, this book will
Mm-hmm.
definitely help you. In
Mm-hmm.
addition, right, even for generating the ideas, this book is a good
Yeah.
reference thing,
Right. Right.
because
Right.
talk a lot of techniques for innovative solutions also. I gave some
Mm-hmm.
examples of very innovative use cases also. Okay, so and it's not only purely theoretical architecture patterns. We also then have a separate section where we have shown that how those architecture patterns can be combined to create fully functional use cases.
Mm.
And just to show the efficacy of those patterns, that they are complete, and they can be used to implement any use case for that matter.
Right.
And it's not that only we have kind of taken use cases, we have gone across multiple domains.
Mm-hmm.
Four domains that we cover here are smart agriculture, manufacturing, retail, and consumer. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so we've taken specific examples from those domains and shown that how those patterns can be used to create solutions.
Right.
So
Right.
that's the second part of it, and the third part is also interesting. The third part we talk about, we go slightly more concrete, showing that what are the differences when we start developing IoT solution vis-a-vis developing other software solutions, for example, or generic solutions. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, I'll just give you one example. So, analytics, if we apply to IoT, are different than the analytics which are generally there. For example, we need to have
Okay.
specific considerations there. Similarly, from a security standpoint, right? Security in IoT is quite different from security, let's say, in the desktop world, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a separate section dedicated for that. Okay, so what are the specific consideration we should have while developing analytics security, and not to forget about sensor and actuator selection. Okay, what are the
Mm-hmm.
consideration we should be having while selecting those sensors and actuators?
Right,
Which is
right,
which forms kind of a foundational issues or foundational challenge people face while developing IoT solutions. How to
right, right.
compare different sensors, how to compare different actuators. And in the last section, right, last section is also quite interesting, where we go beyond IoT. Okay, so there we talk about how kind of IoT can be combined with other technologies, emerging technologies, to create even richer and the stronger use cases.
Mm-hmm.
Right, how IoT can be combined with Web3, how IoT can be combined with the 3D printing, for example. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
what about IoT combining with large language models, Chat GPT? Okay,
Yeah,
what about
yeah.
combining social media with the IoT? So that's the very very interesting section. And then I wrap it up with my learnings over the years, do's and don'ts. Okay, what points person should remember while developing IoT solutions.
Mm.
So that's how the high level what is the book is covering.
Yeah. No, it's really cool, and certainly we'll put in the show notes a link to it on Amazon. Um,
Right.
I think it's like, one of the things I thought was fascinating, and I keep seeing this as a gap, or at least I would say it's an opportunity in the industry, is around education. And
Yep.
I think if you're not committed, even if you've been doing this for decades, if you're not committed to learning new things on a daily or weekly basis, you're not doing yourself a favor. And, for myself, I spend a big chunk of my week reading and listening and learning new things. I was just at the NVIDIA conference, and I've been kind of, and I had a show recently on around robotics, and I've been really digging into that platform and what's happening there just to learn, state of the art and where things are heading and who's doing what. And so I think that it's like, this kind of education mindset is really critical for folks. I mean, as you mentioned, the tech changes all the time. So,
Yes.
and the new tech, there was just a conference around generative AI on the edge, using transformer based model architectures in resource constrained devices, for example, is a huge new area that people should be learning about. That, if you're not dedicated to education and don't have that as part of your daily set of things to do, get a cup of coffee, get educated, do work, you're going to be behind, or you're going to be missing, the opportunities out there to serve your customers better. So is that something that you have thought about in terms of like where education fits into everyone's kind of professional existence?
That's correct. You very aptly put that point. So in our industry, right, we call as software industry or IT industry, learning
Hmm.
is a continuous process. Even if you
Right.
don't learn for 1 week, you are behind the curve. Okay, because the
Probably, yeah.
tech changes so fast. So that was definitely at back of my mind. But more importantly, I wanted to create something which has lot a sustainable value over that period of time. Okay,
Hmm.
I didn't want it create something which is out of date maybe after 6 months or 1 year. Okay, so that was the reason it took slightly more time. In fact, it took almost 2 years for me to complete this book. Okay,
Mm.
because I wanted to create something which is long lasting, at least 3-4 years. It should be relevant or valid. And one more point, it's not only for the kind of tech professionals. Okay, so even people who are in the academics, okay, people who are
Hmm.
into engineering colleges, okay, who are learning IoT, they found it really useful. And getting a lot of appreciation from those people also. And book is doing pretty well, both from in the academic circle as well in the corporate circles.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, I do a lot of mentoring, do a lot of work with kind of early in career and college level students. And there's always a need for fresh perspectives and coursework, at that level as well. Right. So I could see this, not only helping, folks that are just kind of in it as professionals today in the industry, but people that are learning about the space. And those students seem to be getting younger and younger, or I'm getting older and older. I'm not sure which, but even at the high school level, right? I mean, like basic, engineering practices and, learning how to look at problems and problem solving. I think this is another area where your book is focused on, like, let's take a look at the problems and what are the patterns and architectures to solve problems. That's pretty foundational, I would say, even in the high school level of curriculum. So it'd be great to see this kind of permeate, down into that kind of world, as well as where it currently is, whereas it's more at the professional level, right?
Correct. And I was talking to to my people in my college, right, from where I passed out.
Hmm.
So the students were telling me that they have gone through that book, and what they have found is really interesting is that it captures the actual practical knowledge. Okay,
Yeah.
so normally they are exposed to very theoretical things, very less of a practical insights. Okay,
Hmm.
but this book they are saying is a right balance between theory and practice. So it captures kind
Right.
of do's and don'ts, as I mentioned also. Okay, and also
Hmm.
the overall fundamental principles and techniques.
Yeah. Yeah. There's also a lot of online stuff. I don't know if you've thought about like the Coursera's and the Khan Academies, and there's so many platforms out there for education.
Yeah.
You know, this kind of material too is pretty important for people to kind of get a good grounding on. So, that's another avenue. And I would encourage folks listening, if you have not signed up for a Coursera or whatever, there's so many free classes out there that you can get educated on. And this kind of material too, I think, plays well into that space.
Definitely, that's a good idea, Pete.
Hmm. Yeah. So tell me a little bit, let's pivot a little bit. So you're at IBM right now, and you've been
That's
there for, yeah,
slightly more than 2 years now.
2 years. Wow. That's
Yeah,
interesting. So IBM's been going through a lot of changes. When I think about IBM, of course, everyone knows the story about IBM and Thomas Watson and the cash registers and the whole thing,
yeah,
and the mainframes and the PC, and we can go on, but we don't need to go back that far.
yeah,
And these days too, they're also doing a lot of supercomputer, kind of on-prem supercomputer stuff for like FinOps and financial institutions. A lot of people don't realize
yeah.
a lot of financial institutions use IBM on-prem in their own data centers, kind of their own little cloud, to do very high performance transactions. And they're doing a lot in AI space, and it's pretty fascinating. So in terms of, but you're focused on more of the IoT and solutions part of IBM, or how does that organize, or how do you plug into IBM?
That's correct. So as you said, right? So IBM is doing pretty good work in quantum computing space,
Hmm.
supercomputers, right? And as you said, right, they have a very good footprint in the financial domain as well.
Mm-hmm.
But as you mentioned, my role is into the IoT team. Okay, we
Mm-hmm.
support the customers into their IoT journey, into their transformation journey,
Right.
advise them, guide them, right, and kind of create architectures for them to begin with. And it's not only architectures; I'm also involved end-to-end development also. So till the
Hmm.
solution is actually deployed, so I'm typically involved there as well.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So that's interesting. And do you focus solely on kind of the India market, or do you travel? Do you get to go to interesting places?
Yeah, so
Sometimes with
we
customers take you to interesting places. That's what I find. So.
yeah. So we do both, right? We do domestic projects also, and we take other projects also. For example,
Hmm.
be it Germany, right, US, UK. So we are
Mm-hmm.
not restricted in that sense.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, no, it's whenever they call it kind of customer facing roles. So,
Yeah,
as an engineer, you can be kind of more internally facing and develop product, which is cool and, very righteous, or you can be customer facing, which is, helping customers use the tech, deploy the technology. Sometimes that's part of a sales organization. Sometimes that's still part of an R&D organization. I mean, any good product team needs to have the voice of the customer in the product development process, right? So that they understand exactly who they're building for and what's important to them. Um, but it's interesting that you're in a customer facing role. I always felt like the customer partner facing stuff was an interesting dynamic because if you get into solely into like a product team that's very inward and like focusing on getting their code designed and checked in, you can get into a little bit of a vacuum and a bubble. But it sounds like you're fully vested in the customer experience and the problems they're trying to solve, right? So do you work with the product development teams as well and sort of help provide a lot of the voice of the customer into that process?
Correct. So I do interact with customers, and as a solution architect or a principal architect role, right? I'm
Mm-hmm.
supposed to talk to customers, understand their requirements, pain points, and
Yeah.
create a solution which kind of alleviates those issues. And also, obviously, I need to interact with the development team also. It's kind of
Mm.
to ensure that they are understanding the requirements, they understanding the architecture. Okay,
Right.
so kind of deciding between different approaches, technical approaches. That's also part of the role there.
Mm-hmm.
From a product management standpoint, we do have a different, people who take care of that function.
Right. Right. I see. Cool. Yeah, no, it's interesting. And so what's next now that you have the book out there? Is there another book? I mean, is there a movie? Like what's happening? What's the next project for you now that you got this thing out the door?
Yeah, so I'm still kind of talking about that book. I'm promoting that book because I
Mm-hmm.
feel that it has a lot of potential.
Mm-hmm.
Once it reaches its potential, its target audience, then I'll start thinking of the next project. Because for me, it's not quantity is not that much important. A good
Mm-hmm.
content, that is much more important. And I personally feel that I've created a good content which would be of use to both corporate professional as well as people who are just learning IoT.
Right.
So as of now, the focus is to kind of bring the message to them. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
help
Mm-hmm.
them, right, and guide them. And in case they have any questions, queries, I am always kind of happy to help them in their journey, whether they are
Mm-hmm.
just starting their journey or they are kind of in between their journey. I kind of know it's my passion. As I said in the beginning, it's my passion, so I'm always
Yeah.
there for supporting them. Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. Fantastic. Sounds good. Well, Jasbir, it was good to finally connect in real time, in this kind of video audio way, since we've been sort of iterating by, LinkedIn message and other things for the past 6 months. So it's great to have you on the show and learn more about the book. Any closing thoughts or words of wisdom for the audience, other than go check out the book, obviously, but there's
No, it has been my pleasure, Patty. Thanks for inviting me. It was
Sure.
a wonderful conversation, and
Awesome.
yeah, and from a message standpoint, I would say that IoT is the next big thing. Okay,
Hmm.
and it's a very unique proposition because we are combining real and virtual worlds. Okay,
Right.
typically we don't find that into in normal solution development. Okay,
Right.
so
Right.
IoT is very unique, and and that makes it even more interesting. So people who are just thinking of kind of starting a journey there, who want to take this course, my suggestion is go for it. You
Yeah.
want,
Go for it.
yeah,
That sounds like a good closing statement. Go for it. Awesome. Well, Jasbir, sounds good. And we'll talk soon. Thanks.
sure. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today on the Excelsior Show. Please subscribe and stay tuned for more, and check us out online about how you can scale your edge compute business.